All right, well, welcome everyone to another workshop here at the test camp. This is FTCE General Knowledge Test Reading. It's the second of the 4 workshops that we do in this series. So let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. All right, before we get started, we want to welcome those who are joining us live online. You can contribute your comments anytime, and we'll include as many as possible up here in the discussions. And if you join us on demand through the Test Camp YouTube channel, welcome to you too. And of course, you can pause or restart or replay that video anytime. Again, this workshop is for the general knowledge test. Most of you here today, you said you've already scheduled this test. Is that right? How many have already scheduled this test? All right, go ahead. Yes, and you have a question over here. I'm going to repeat your question for those who are listening to the recording. Yes, we suggest that you train in this order, especially for those communication sections, because that English, reading, and essay, the competencies are built on each other in sequence. Good question, thank you. All right, so you likely know by now that around here the motto is prepare, practice, perform. And everyone who has successfully completed the training has passed their test. And that's because test taking is a skill, and the skills require practice. No amount of talk that I can do here today or somebody can do on a webinar is going to get you through this. You have to practice the test skills. So let's go ahead and get started. To prepare here at the test camp means to understand yourself. You have to understand the test, but also understand yourself. Take an honest assessment of how well you know both the test content and your testing skills. So we start by learning the content through the blueprint. And if you've participated in these other teacher career workshops, you know that the blueprint provides all the information you need to fully understand the test. All right. So assessing your knowledge of the blueprint is also the first indicator of how you might perform on the test and to creating your study plan. That's what we call the areas. We call it My Study Plan over at the Training Center. This is a schedule that includes reviewing and studying test content. All right, well, let's talk more about the blueprint now. This is an overview of the entire GK, or General Knowledge Test. Of course, you know by now that it's a series of 4 individual tests. Each one is very different. And that's one reason why I think some of you have said you're going to take the test on 2 separate days. Am I getting that correct? Okay. So is there an extra charge for that? What if I want to do 2 tests on one day and 2 on another day? Okay, well, make sure you check with the testing center, or maybe you want to do that. Some people do it all in one day. Now, what we know is the reading test has 40 multiple choice questions, and the time allotted is 55 minutes. So just over 1 minute allotted for each question. Now, knowing this helps put you on a pace for success. You do not have to be in a hurry on this test. You decide when to answer a question, and you decide when to mark and save it for the next pass through. That's one of the skills you practice over at the testing site. All right, the training site, yeah. Our first step now is to identify what types of reading questions you can expect to encounter on your test. All right, we know that all of them are formatted, all 40 of them are formatted multiple choice. What we're going to do here today is identify or start identifying the reading competencies on which the questions are built. And you're going to see how that becomes very helpful. On this test, there are 4 competencies. We're going to look at each one individually here today, beginning with ideas, or the main ideas. Okay, questions based on this competency test your knowledge to identify inferences, conclusions, and assumptions that you find in a passage. All right, so do you get that? There's going to be a question, and it's going to ask you something about what the author inferred, concluded, or assumed. All right, so here's a sample question. And we're not going to read all this now. It's just a typical passage up there at the top. Happens to be the Gettysburg Address. But down here at the bottom, there's a typical question based on this competency. Right? You see how this is related to an idea or ideas. Okay, here's a second sample question from the same passage. Okay, in this case, the question is related only to a certain statement in the passage. All right, so that's how it works. Those were examples of questions written to test your ability, your competence, to identify key ideas and details. You can expect about 16 of the 40 questions to be based on this competency. All right, the second competency then is purpose. There'll be questions related to the author's purpose, sometimes called the focus. You can ask yourself why. Why was this passage written? All right, so here at the test camp, we help you identify the 4 main reasons. Can you think about what they might be? What are the 4 purposes? Well, here's the first one on our list. It's opinion. So let's think about this for a moment. What are some other words that are similar to opinion? Let's be a thesaurus here, some synonyms. What do you say? Over here, belief. Okay, how about you over here? So opinion is your viewpoint or your point of view. Okay, and when you write an essay, you might be given a prompt that asks you to express your opinion, right? So let's take some time to discuss this at the tables. Opinion is just one of the 4 main reasons for writing. What are the other 3? All right, share your thoughts with each other. See if you can match our list of purposes for writing and for the prompts that you might expect when you go to write that essay. We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Now, those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them in the discussion. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and list some of your thoughts. How do you categorize purposes? Think about why and why this might be important when preparing for a reading test or for when you write your essay. We'll be here when you restart the video. Okay, back up here. Welcome back, everyone. Let's take a look at the 4 main purposes that are all found actually right here in this sample question down there in this answer set. All right, you see the purposes represented here? Notice that there's 2 main categories, argumentative and informative. The first argumentative purpose is, like we said, opinion. When you want to express a, like you said over here, a viewpoint, point of view, viewpoint. The second is persuasion. Did you have this in your groups? All right, so you knew this. So how is this different from opinion? I'm going to repeat your answer for those listening to the recording. Thank you. Over here. So persuasion is a call to action. There you go. More than just providing a point of view. Now, here's a sample question from that same passage, the Gettysburg Address. Can you see how this question is argumentative? Yes, it includes the author's opinion, all right, about how critical or important this event might be. All right. Now, there are 2 informative reasons to communicate also. The first is simply to provide information. All right, so when you want to teach, you're going to provide facts or concepts. So that's being informative through information. And those of you who are in teacher education programs, you probably recognize this as direct teaching. The second way to be informative is just to provide an explanation. When you describe how to give directions, maybe you give an instructions. So that's telling people how to do something. Here's another sample question. Can you see what's different here? Does anybody see it? Yes. Right, instead of asking about purpose, they use the term focus. Sometimes those are used interchangeably, so there you know that that's a purpose question. All right, now we discussed purpose in more detail in the essay workshop also, but you can expect about 8 of these types of questions on your test. Let's move on to the third competency, which is structure. And you might remember from the English workshops that these are the main concepts associated with structure: modifiers, parallelism, and syntax. And do you remember these? They're all related to how authors organize and build sentences or passages. All right, here are some terms related to structure: literal, figurative, and in some cases technical. So let's take time to discuss the meaning of these terms. What does it mean to be literal, figurative, or technical? Share your thoughts with each other. How would you explain these terms maybe to younger students? And can you come up with some examples? We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Now, those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts. We're going to include them right up here on the discussion boards. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this is another good opportunity to pause that recording and check your understanding of these writing tools. Okay, think about why this might be important when you're preparing for a reading test. All right, we'll be here when you restart the video. All right, good discussions at the tables. We're back up here. There you go. Okay, we're now more clear about these tools, right? Feel pretty good about that. These are used by the authors to organize their writing, right? So literal, we said the author means, over here, you said the author means exactly what they say, you know, what they write. That's literal. Figurative, if it's figurative, the author asks the reader to make a connection. It's kind of more Socratic, isn't it? And technical, the author's providing the information or the author's providing an explanation. All right, let's look at some sample questions. All right, this is a typical structure question. All right, why did the author put these two phrases together and in what order? That's what they're asking here. Okay, you go up there and you read the phrases that are numbered in bold. Let's go ahead today here and eliminate some of the answers. Starting at the bottom, you can eliminate contradicts, right? Yeah, sentence 2 doesn't contradict sentence 1. So we're going to cross that one out. What else can we eliminate? Yes, I agree. We can eliminate restates. So that leaves you with clarifies or expands, right? Which one do you like best? So that's how it works. That's a question answered, which also provides a preview before you go through the test the second time. All right, so expect about 8 questions of the 40 will be related to structure. The fourth competency is vocabulary, which you likely recognize from the English workshop. All right, these are the skills used to build test questions for this competency. All right, the meanings of words, the correct selection of words, and correct pronunciation, diction, and tone. You can expect about 8 test items in this competency area also. And here's an example. Of course, you're going to be given the whole passage. Yes, question over here. Usually 3 to 4 sections. The question was about the passage. How long will they be? Usually 3 to 4 paragraphs if it's an essay. Maybe 2, 3 stanzas if it's a poem. But again, you can see why answering vocabulary questions on the first pass through the test, that's going to be a valuable time management strategy. You get a preview to what the question is going to be. All right, you'll practice that over at the training site. Okay, you can also expect to be asked vocabulary tools, like this question about an idiom. And that's an overview of the 4 competencies that were used to construct the test questions. All right, let's discuss a test strategy suggested by those who have gone before you. All right, do you think you know what we're talking about here? So you generally have about 3, maybe 4 questions, several questions that are on each passage, sometimes more than 3. So what's being asked here? Do you think you get it? Yes, where do you start? Exactly. This is a timed test. It's one of the few that demands really good time management. So do you read the passage, then go and try to answer the questions? Or do you read through the questions, then you go up to the passage and try to find the answers, right? So what was your strategy before we started talking about this today? How many here, by show of hands, let's see if we've got any honest people, you begin by reading the passage first, and then you go to answer the questions? How many? How many start with the questions first, or at least skim through them? All right, so this is your, thank you, this is your current personal strategy, isn't it? And you're going to see over at the training site that this sign's going to appear many times as you're going down through the pathways there. It indicates a message of encouragement or giving directions or suggestions from those who have gone before you. And according to them, the greatest challenge is going to be how to decide to invest your time. And their suggestion is to read through, or at least skim through, the set of questions before you read the passage. And here's why. We said there's 4 types of questions, right? We just looked at a few examples of each type. Some questions are less challenging and they require less time. So the suggestion is to invest your time on the less challenging questions the first pass through the test. Now, two types of questions are less challenging: structure and vocabulary. So investing time on these questions on the first pass through the test provides a preview to each passage, and it puts you on a pace for success. This test skill is called Decide when you get over to the training site, so you have plenty of time to work on that. All right, so again, we know there are 40 questions on this GK reading test, and we know the distribution of the questions. About 16 represent the competency ideas. All right, so what do we know about the percent to pass? Well, the percent to pass is 75. So since we know there's 40 questions, the number of correct responses would be, somebody could get this, any math people? There you go, 30. So 30 out of 40 correct answers. All right, so knowing that, here's the question for you to talk about again at your tables. Which would you choose? And what I mean here is, if the entire test was built on just one of these competencies, what's your preference? A 40-question test on just one of these competencies. Do you like recognizing the key ideas? Are you pretty good at that? Do you recognize the purpose of a passage? Maybe you're better at determining structure. You like the comparing those sentences there. Remember that? Or do you find it easier to find those vocabulary words and their meaning? All right, talk about this at your tables. What if you could have a test with 40 questions based on just one of these competencies? What would be your preference? All right, again, for you folks who are, let me get that back. Again, for you folks that are joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we're going to include them in the discussion. And if you're joining us by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and share some of your thoughts. Write this down. What do you think? Are you more prepared right now to work through the test in terms of ideas, purpose, structure, or vocabulary? And we'll be here when you restart the video. Okay, welcome back up here. Right, that's right. All right, well, you had very different preferred topics here. We're kind of all over the board on this. Some of you prefer the ideas, even though it takes a little more time. And you've made a good point, I think, over here. There's more of those questions, so maybe that's where you want to make sure that you practice and review and study. All right, and speaking of that, to prepare for this test, you started today by joining this workshop. So you've gained knowledge about what to expect on your test. Another way to prepare is to select the tools you might need or the resources. This will to guarantee your success. So you expect to see this sign again along the way, along those pathways during your test skills training. There's encouraging messages are posted for those who have gone before you, and in this case, they're messages to avoid spending your time and your money on expensive resources that you just don't need. Commercial webinars are a good example. Avoid paying for free test information and strategies. You don't need to pay out for that in a webinar. It's all given free by the test making company. Expensive tutors and tutoring companies might be an option, but not for this test. Overpriced study guides, also sold for profit, and many study guides are available are either free or inexpensive. So there's no need to spend a lot of money on study guides. Has anybody here already bought a study guide? A couple of you have. How much did you pay for that? If you don't mind me asking, yeah. 35? And you paid 40 online or in a store, like a bookstore? Yeah. Well, I hate to show you, but I'm going to show you it's a lot. You could have got by with a lot less inexpensively, and a more effective and inexpensive resource might have been textbooks for you all too. Now that you know the competencies being tested, you could use textbooks to review and study the test content. Now here's what I was talking about. Over in the My Resources area at the training site, you can expect to find the most popular and up-to-date tools for your success right there. And look at the prices. Everything is either free or you can buy a used guide between $3 and $15. Yes, that's right. That's going straight to Amazon. So instead of investing time and money on resources, what's being suggested is invest in yourself. Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence and personal independence. Your pass provides admission to these training areas. And up there at the top is My Test. This is an activity that enables you to check your understanding of the entire test blueprint we've been talking about here today. You can also take a pre-test before the training. And this is the test camp problem solving system. The first step is defining a correct answer. Up there at the top, identify the type of question by the competency. Sound familiar? We've been doing that today, haven't we? Then you have quizzes and tests. These provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while assessing your test content knowledge. The quizzes are based all on the competencies, and the questions change randomly on each attempt. There's even a combined test down there. The tests are constructed with features like those you can expect on your test day. Plenty of practice tests are there for you, and again, randomized. Each time you're going to get a different one. And as you complete the training activities, you can earn points towards a professional test certificate, and that's going to guarantee your success. Then expect to perform with the confidence that comes from the knowledge and skills earned during the training. So let's get started. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.